pray for the leaders of our country during this time of disturbance in the world. Guide them in the use of their powers that we seek forgiveness and peace at home and around the world. Be with our military here and abroad that they may be safe while protecting us from the unknown. May we remember that we set the standards for the future and that we lead by example. Let us trust your will in all we do. We ask your prayer in your holy name.
Amen.
Amen.
I'm getting an echo too. I don't know. We got it a couple of weeks ago as well, though.
IT staff, if you can look at that, see what we can figure out where the echo's coming from. Moving on to special presentations, 3A, Mr. Roy Jones, Electric Cities of North Carolina. He's here to present the Public Powers Awards of Excellence. Roy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hope you all are doing well. I will tell you, when I come to Albemarle, I love coming here and driving around. I mean, just the changes that are going on. I was talking to the mayor before the meeting started, and just to see the growth and the focus on the future and not dwelling on the past. And it truly does show as you drive around the community and you see the vibrant community, the downtown, the growth areas with the commercial businesses that are out there. It's a pleasure to come here, and I really do enjoy it. Also, I just want to kind of talk about this award and where we are. And this is as much for Jay and his team as it is anyone in the room, customer service, the utility folks, all of our linemen. But every year we try to look across all of our 73 public power communities in North Carolina and identify communities that are really standing out above and beyond. And I'm pleased to be here to present Albemarle with an award in two areas that you are being recognized with this year. First of all, the area is strengthening public power. For many years, we kept very quiet about public power and the value of public power and the value it brings to the community. But in today's society, you can no longer afford to do that. You got to tell your story, because if you're not telling it, somebody's going to tell it for you. And the things that you all are doing as a public power community to truly let the community understand the benefits and the value of being public power, whether it's restoration time, the reduced number of outages, but also the jobs that it provides. I think the line workers recently went around to a lot of the junior high schools and showed the students the equipment, the tools, the trucks, and then talked to them about careers in the line worker area, and began getting out that message of local ownership, local control, the local benefits of being a public power community. But it didn't just stop there. Customer service ladies, when you had Public Power Week passing out appreciation bags to the citizens as they came in. I think there's the Food Truck Friday. They passed out bags and public power recognition at that. So just constantly reminding folks about, we are a public power community. That means local ownership, local control. You're not beholden on some investor-owned utility to send crews from 3 hours away to come here to restore power. They're right here in the backyard, and they're their neighbors. The other one is people. The people focus, you cannot underestimate that. Just as I talked about the line workers and the restoration times in public power communities are better than the cooperatives or the investor-owned utilities. And when the power does go out, as infrequent as it is, it gets back on faster. Well, that comes from paying competitive pay to keep your qualified workers here, but also to be able to attract that new generation of worker. So once you get them here and make sure that they're getting paid competitive and they stay here, you also got to make sure they stay trained. And you all, through your focus on training and safety, do just that. It's going to pay dividends down the road as some of us, and I'm using that word us, looking in the mirror, as some of us retire and we hand the keys over to the next generation to take it forward. So Jay, congratulations to you and your team on another outstanding year in public power. One more quick announcement, if I could.
Yes, sir.
Each year we hold our Electric Cities annual conference That's where the public power communities across North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia all come together, talk about the industry, talk about issues, the changes in customers' expectations, technology, all those issues. And I know many of you have attended those in the past. I hope you find them beneficial. So this year's annual conference is going to be held August the 12th through the 15th. It's going to be in Asheville, North Carolina. So please mark that on your calendars, and if you can, please take time to come to the conference. I think you'll find it beneficial. I know the folks that have attended in the past do, but just want to extend that invitation to each and all of you to attend that conference August the 12th through the 15th. Mr. Mayor, thank you for having me here this
Thank you, Roy, and
Thank
thank
you,
you for
Roy.
coming down to visit with us.
Yep, y'all take care.
Thank
you. Thank you.
Sure.
Who's here today?
Well, we heard it down here.
Cut
It's
your
coming.
speaker off on the bottom of your computer. It stops mine. How do you do that? Is it come through here?
I don't know.
Moving to approval of minutes. Approval of minutes. Consider with approval of minutes for the January 3rd, 2024 special and closed session meetings and the January 22nd regular and closed session meeting.
Move approval. Second.
Motion by Councilmember Aldridge, second by Councilmember Townsend. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Did we get it?
Muted if that's where it's coming.
Moving to agenda adjustments, I have several, council. Number one, Beverly Pennington is listed under administrative reports and should be listed under announced delegations. 11C will be moved to our next meeting and will not be tonight. And 11D, we will add a personnel section. I want to entertain a motion to approve those.
So moved. Approve.
Motion by Councilmember Dry, second by Councilmember Aldridge. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Now moving on to our announced delegations. Beverly Penning, principal of Albemarle High School. Is she, there she
Yes,
is.
she is. She's here.
Good evening.
Pull the mic towards you.
I am dealing with a little bit of laryngitis. Some people would say that's probably a good thing, but I'm going to do the best that I can do to get through at least the first slide or two. So, Mayor Michael, members of the council, we appreciate your ability to allow us to come and speak to you this evening. I reached out just a week or so ago, and here we are tonight. So thank you for your kindness in letting us come and share the great things that are happening in our schools. I think Mr. Jones said it very well. If you're not telling your story, somebody else is. So we want to tell you the story of the schools that are located in the Albemarle city limits. I am just one principal. There are 4 principals at these wonderful schools. And with me tonight, we have the principal of Central, Dr. Eric Johnson, the principal of East, Ms. Judith Warrett. With me is my right hand, my assistant principal. He is going to help me out tonight. And Ann Watson is unfortunately sick. She's the principal at Albemarle Middle, and we're also going to present for her. So just a little bit about our why. Last July, when I was named the principal at Albemarle High School, I knew that we needed to come together as a team. I'm the new kid on the block, so to speak. Dr. Johnson and Ms. Warrett have both been in their schools or been in the district for 4+ years. Ms. Watson Ms. McClendon, she was Watson. Ms. McClendon went to the middle school last year, was her first year. So what you have are 4 committed administrators who want to see change in our city schools. We are here for the long haul. We decided we are going to meet regularly over the course of the school year to meet with our district leaders to talk about our needs. With that have come opportunities and challenges. So we're wanting to bring to you tonight the good things that are happening. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bradshaw, my assistant principal, who's going to tell you about the great things at Albemarle High School.
Thank you. little bit of information for this school year. I actually was a teacher at Albemarle High School, and when Ms. Pennington took the position of principal, she called and asked me to come back, and I said, absolutely. What we came back into was an interesting situation. So at the beginning of this school year, we had a 33% vacancy rate at Albemarle High School. When I was in the classroom, that was unheard of. We have managed to pull that down to a 15% vacancy rate. So at the semester, we were able to hire several new teachers to get them in there to get our kids instruction by new teachers and some certified teachers, but it was a big change from the fall semester where we were shorthanded. As part of that, we have PLCs in the school, so that's where we all meet to discuss our students, their needs, what's going on in the classroom. In the fall semester, we had 3 the entire semester. Since we've been back, we've had 5 weeks of school, and we've had 3 meetings in those first 5 weeks with that new staff. We've instituted Cornell Notes school-wide. So every class is teaching a consistent note-taking method. What we saw was our students didn't know how to process notes, take that information and turn it into usable information. Cornell was created at Cornell University, so we've instituted those, and every teacher is teaching it. We've instituted weekly department meetings. So every week, one of the departments meets on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Each administration team comes with them. We sit down and discuss what's going on in the department, the needs, the standards, things that are information driven to get our scores and students the information that they need. Big thing that we've got, 10 of our teachers are beginning teachers. This is their first 3 years of education. That's 31% of our teachers. So a third roughly of our staff are brand new to the field. They've never taught before. Most of them are in residency programs. That's the new thing where they may have a 4-year degree, but they don't have their teaching credentials, so they're partnered with the university. They go through and they take additional coursework, and that coursework will then get them their licensure. If you look at the enrollment of Albemarle High School by itself, the 5th month, our average daily count is up to 75. We are the highest growth school in the district. The next highest was Stanfield. And then through the course of adding these new teachers in the spring here, we've been able to add some new classes that they've never had before, one of them being Success 101. We've had a Fits for Life and Sport Management, and then we were able to bring back the band thanks to a retired teacher coming in for 1 period a day. That had completely disappeared. So our kids are getting to do music again, which is something that was big when I was there initially, but had disappeared. Some successes that we need to talk about so far. We've had several Title I parent engagement nights where we've brought parents in to show them what's happening in the school. As you can see in the image there, that's one of our math teachers. We had a math-based engagement night where we had a lot of folks come out. They were seeing what's happening in our math classrooms, and there are some good things in a subject that most students consider scary. At the holidays, we did Merry Mathmas, and in all of my time in education, about 2 decades, this was the coolest event I've ever got to witness. We had parents and students in our building at 6:40 in the morning building Christmas trees that were actually Mathmas trees. So the students had to go out and take these trees and create their decorations with math problems. They had to decorate them with a theme, and then it had to be all based on things that they created. They couldn't just go copy a problem. They had to look it up, make it, solve it, present it. Then they had to present it to their schoolmates. So we had different classes of math going around and seeing those trees. One of the mornings we were standing there and they were coming through and kids are discussing math problems first thing in the morning. Like in 2 decades of education, I've never heard kids that in depth talking about a math problem as these young people were going down the hallway with these Mathmas trees. Our Honor Society, this is one of the largest inductions we've had in years. That's just evidence that our kids are capable in doing, and when we get the supports in place, they can really shine. We had 104 students recognized for A's and B's in our first quarter. We've got another celebration coming up for a breakfast for this previous quarter. All of our veteran staff have reported that they expect to come back and that things are better than last year. They've noted the improvements. If you look at athletics, our football team are the Yadkin Valley Conference champions this year. Our head football coach, Coach Davis, was the coach of the year. We've got 2 players that were defensive player and offensive player of the year, Taekwon McDonald and Josiah Geiger. Our men's soccer progressed to postseason play. Wrestling is currently in the 3rd round of the dual teams. Our varsity women's basketball is 16-2. And then we just instituted this past week our daily security screening. So we've got new technology where all of the students come through and they're real-time screened for things that they should not have in the building, like weapons. Our opportunities for growth, we need some things to help with our retention and recruitment. We're looking for support from local businesses and organizations. We've got some churches, we'd like to get some more help. You know, if they're interested, have them reach out to us. We would love to tell them, hey, these are things you can do to help your Albemarle schools. And then we'd like to find a way to get some more parent involvement. While the Title I nights are an open invite, our parents typically don't show up in the numbers that we would like to see as they do in other areas. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the middle school. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for welcoming us to your meeting. I am Judith Taylor, and I'm the principal at East Albemarle, but I am going to try my best to represent Albemarle Middle School for a few moments because Ms. McClendon is at home sick this evening. Let's see, at Albemarle Middle, we have so much to be proud of. We have retained most of our staff and administrators. It takes at least 3 years to build an environment that is prosperous and forward-thinking. I must tell you that last year at this time, I would not believe we are where we are now. We have worked hard to retain most of our staff from last year, and all students have a certified teacher in tested areas. You can see from our data on this slide the growth from the 22-23 school year until now. We currently have 87% of students passing all of their classes, which is up from 52% at this time last year. Our numbers of office referrals for discipline have also decreased drastically. So what are we doing differently? We know that we cannot do the same things and expect different results. This year, we are taking great accountability for acknowledging our students who are doing the right things and making great choices. We have a quarterly Bulldog Bash in which our students look forward to attending. We just had our second honor roll breakfast for students and their families this past Friday, in which our entire cafeteria was full, standing room only. And lastly, students cannot learn if there are constant distractions in class. We have opened up a school within a school called Bulldog Academy to help with this. Our continued conversation with our monthly meetings as principals within the Albemarle schools has been, we must sustain and retain the same staff. It is hard when we have to rebuild our schools from year to year with a different staff. And many times we do have to rebuild due to our staff leaving for better pay in other districts. We are also extremely grateful to our area businesses and churches who have been so giving. Vortex, Anderson Grove, First Baptist, and Centerview are just a few who support Albemarle Middle School. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to show our passion for our schools. And now I'm going to switch gears to talk about my home, which is East Albemarle. At East, the 23-24 school year is definitely different from last school year. As many of you are probably aware, our school earned a school report card grade of an F, which is defeating. But this year we have turned things around. All students have a certified homeroom teacher and a media specialist to instill those early literacy skills. Out of 26 certified positions, including our AMP and Encore and support staff, 18 homeroom classes are allotted, and only one of those has had to be collapsed due to a vacancy. So basically, those students went into other homeroom classes to be served by a certified teacher. I have 2 residency and beginning teachers and 4 traditional beginning teachers. The residency program accepts teachers from other backgrounds and helps them to gain their certification. And then the 4 traditional beginning teachers took the traditional pathway to become a teacher, and they're within their first 3 years. This year, I have been able to add and fill several different positions, 2 being instructional assistants in our kindergarten and first grade classes to reinforce those foundational reading skills, 1 Title I tutor, 1 EduCore tutor, and a behavior specialist. Our mid-year data shows some promises. Each grade level demonstrated growth in reading and math at mid-year. But as a school, we set a goal to not just show some growth, but to show 10 percentage points of growth at every point during the year. So that would be middle of the year and then again at the end of the year. Kindergarten, first and second grade met or exceeded that 10% goal in reading. First, second, and third grade met or exceeded that 10% goal in math. Our behavior data is also reflected on this slide. They range, this is the percentage of students with 0 major office referrals. And our first and third grade were able to hold steady in the 90% with no major office referrals or increase that percentage. So a larger number on that side of the board, of course, is good. We want to see that number increase to a higher percentage of no office referrals. Our opportunities for growth are very similar to those at the middle school and high school. We want to recruit and retain highly qualified staff to provide students with that rigorous, differentiated instruction that we know is needed to help them close that learning gap. To do that, we need professional development for our beginning teachers and veteran teachers. We need incentives for longevity, improved transportation plans, adjusted bell schedules, and then facility improvements at East. Increased parent engagement and attendance at events is always a positive. And of course, community support. We want the community to know what's going on at school and to be proud of the work that we're doing there. Thank you for your time, and I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Johnson at Central.
Awesome. Good evening, Dr. Johnson, as Ms. Ware alluded to. I appreciate your time this evening. Of course, they put me last, one, because they know I'm a talker. So I'm going to try to keep it short, and two, so that I have to figure out what I'm going to say so I'm not repeating everything that they're saying. So we have a lot of amazing things taking place at Central. I'm more of an image person and colors and pictures, so I try to put less words on my slides, so I'll try to fill in the blanks for y'all. But I think this is my third year at Central. I spent 2 at East Albemarle before this. I absolutely love what I do. I love the kids that I work with. I love our staff. Many of you probably don't know, I drive an hour to come to work. There are lots of jobs out there. And I wouldn't do that if I truly did not believe in what we are doing at Central. But we have some struggles. And I think I'm kind of glad at this point, after listening to them share about their schools, that I have a chance to kind of tie it up, because we have some needs in the city that are in the city schools that I think we can kind of advocate for, on behalf of our staff and our students for. So one thing you'll see here just on this slide, my first year at Central, we had a very veteran staff. You can see that from the table. We had 43 staff members at that time. Only 8 of them were beginning teachers, which means they had gone through the teacher training programs at a university or a college. And then we had 2 teachers that were in that residency program, which means they have a 4-year degree in something other than education. And you can see that first year, we exceeded growth expectations, which is a difficult thing to do when you're looking at that, doing that as a whole school. And then gradually, as you trend across the columns here of the table, as each year has progressed, we've gotten bigger. So obviously growth, as you all know, has been a good thing. We've added some teachers, but with that, we're adding more teachers who have less experience. They have those 4-year degrees in something other than working with children and teaching children. So now when you look at our current staff, you can see one of our concerns is that we have 17 out of our 47 teachers are what we consider beginning teachers. And of that percentage, over half of those are in the residency program, meaning they're teaching while learning how to teach. And if you do any sort of research in education, there's John Hattie, and he does all of these effect sizes as far as what factors impact a child's education. And the most significant effect size is the collective efficacy of your teachers. And you'll see that when you have trained teachers, experienced teachers, you tend to get a different result at the end of the year, a more positive result. So we've got a lot of work to do, and we have amazing coaches. You can see we had 7 vacancies to start the year, which is 15% of our staff, and we still have 4. The EC world is a very difficult place to find, qualified candidates. So we have 4 self-contained classrooms right now that don't have certified teachers, but have amazing people who have stepped up and are taking the charge and leading the way in those classrooms. But that is, our neediest population, where we're struggling to be able to provide them with the appropriate support and structure that they need. I have 2 IAs, which are our instructional assistants, and we couldn't do what we do at Central without our IAs. But they are serving in teacher classrooms in some of these teacher roles, which is at a detriment then to the general population of our students, because we use them to do small groups and really support some of the gaps that our students have. So there's kind of a domino effect here. Some of our middle of the year performance data, like we've been just digesting this heavily since coming back from Christmas break. And you'll see I've not been able to input some of the Stanley County Schools measures. I actually got those later this afternoon from Mr. Plummer. But just like East, we're kind of, Judith and I work together in Kansas, so we try to do a lot of things as sister schools. Have the same goal that we want to improve our reading and our math proficiency with our students by 10% by middle of the year, and then again at the end of the year. And you can see that regardless of some of these hurdles, we have our kindergartners and our fourth graders are showing that type of growth here in reading so far. And then when we're looking at math, we see that with our second, third, and fourth grade students. But again, when you look at some of those percentages, there's still work to do. So we're not, we don't rest on our laurels. We don't, pat ourselves on the back. We just acknowledge this and we continue moving forwards. And you can see here as you look through across some of our grade levels, if I had more time, I would have loved to put a slide in there that kind of shows you how our data is trending year to year as we follow pockets of students and cohorts of students, because we've made a lot of changes K2 to kind of strengthen our core instruction for those students so that eventually as they transition to Ann at the middle school and Beverly at the high school, we have them prepared for those challenges. Again, some of the same similarities when we're talking about opportunities for growth, I think especially when we're talking about at Central. But for me, the biggest thing is any vacancy that I have, we don't get qualified candidates applying. This year, just oddly, most of the applicants that we've had are from the Philippines, who have teaching degrees from the Philippines. I cannot get a certified teacher to apply to a job at Central. I don't know if it's just location or what it is. So having some sort of a way to be able to incentivize, that recruitment and retainment of our teachers is huge. Transportation is something I know we work on at the district level. Facilities is another thing. I know with just growing, like we are busting at the seams, and we are the third largest school in Stanley County Schools at Central. I don't have a nook or a cranny to provide an office space for somebody, and I love it. It's always a concern when you have somebody else that needs a space, but I just love that we're just brimming at the seams. And then another focus for us is just increasing our parent engagement and our participation. So again, they let me tie all this up. What does it all mean? I think the biggest thing is we wanted to come here first to tackle the differences in perception and reality. I think there's a perception in the 5 years that I've been working in the Albemarle schools of what goes on in our schools, what happens at our schools versus the reality. We've got a lot of amazing people that dedicate their time and their lives to working with our students who are the future of this community. We know our North Carolina school report card grades are, as Judith said, very defeating. They do not adequately measure the amount of effort that our adults are putting in, and we're doing what we can to change that. We do deal with, as you all know, the complexity of generational poverty. I know there's poverty throughout the district. I think when you're talking about generational poverty, you're talking about very different factors than just your typical standard poverty. And I think, the bad part with the school report cards is it doesn't take into account a lot of the good things that happen. For those of you that know or don't know, a North Carolina school report card is 80% proficiency and then 20% student growth. We focus on growth, knowing that the majority of our students come into school with gaps and with absences in terms of just in their learning, their word acquisition, being taught to, being read to. We focus on growing students, K-5, so that when they transition to the middle school, they have the skill set to be successful and take on those challenges. So how do we flip that script? I think you've heard a very common theme. We just need to attract qualified people. Our kids in the city deserve the absolute best. I truly believe that. I would put our kids up against anybody else's kids in this district because I truly believe that when push came to shove, our kids would do whatever needed to be done better and more effectively and more efficiently. But we got to have the right people working with them. And I think that comes to finding ways that we can retain some of our most effective people. Our doors are always open for anybody in the community, for all of you. I think getting people in the building, getting a feel for the culture and the climates that we're trying to build can really help garner some of that additional support. And then, I guess at the end of the day, while we're here, we just want to advocate for opportunities for our kids. They deserve the best of the best. And we know that you guys, feel the same way that we do, and we can get more people on board with that. I think we can really change the narrative here. So. With that being said, I believe that's all we got.
Thank you. Anyone else
Thank
coming back up to speak? Beverly? Council, questions, comments?
I have a couple of questions. BOY, MOY, EOY. Beginning of year, middle of year, end of year. Not boy, moi, I almost said that, and then I thought, no, the reason Dr. Johnson doesn't have that finished is that he was playing basketball on Thursday night, and that's where his mind was on Thursday night, so. Just a couple of just things, because I, for one, and I don't know about my comrades up here, don't understand the letter acronyms for things. BPIS model.
We'll come back to
Yeah,
the
come back up
microphone.
and, yeah, that's good.
PBIS, that is the hill I will die on as an administrator. Any teacher that's worked for me will tell you that. PBIS stands for Positive Behavior Interventions and Support. So what it aims to do is to encourage positive decision-making, good choices, over necessarily the consequences.
Okay.
So it's really focusing on the kids that are doing what we need to do so that the other students, typically will then fall in line,
Right.
which comes with a whole bunch of, incentives and a lot of things that run parallel to that.
AMP.
AMP, that's AMP staff, art, music, PE.
Ah.
So we've got art, music, PE, that's what the district calls it, AMP. And then we've added like a STEM classroom at Central to get kids exposed to kind of that hands-on science, technology, engineering, math.
Very good.
With Miss Sanders, who's awesome. I know they have that at East as well. And then obviously our school counselors, they teach classes, which is at a huge disservice to what a school counselor can provide, especially
Right.
at a school like Central.
Right.
And so that's, our electives, I guess, is what people would call them.
IAS.
What's that? Oh, instructional assistants.
And are they certified?
No, but they have to be highly qualified. As Title I schools, all of our staff have to be highly qualified. And so in order to be an instructional assistant in a Title I school, you have to have either a 2-year degree or it's like 96 credit hours. Whereas in a non-Title I school, you just have to have a high school diploma.
So the follow-up to that would be, and I applaud, Beverly, if you've got a teacher in every classroom right now. I applaud that at the high school. I applaud that across the 4 schools, but particularly the high school, because I had heard, and again, this is hearsay, so I'm glad you're able to be here, is that we have had classes where we have had substitutes in the classroom every day. Is that correct?
That is correct. I had a 2nd grade classroom that had a substitute fill in the entire 1st quarter. And then right now I have 3 TAs that have been the teacher all year in 3 self-contained classrooms. And another TA that was a teacher in a classroom for an entire semester before we could find somebody.
And you have 4 self-contained classes that are open or total at the school?
What's that?
Do you have 4 self-contained classes, just 4 there,
Yep.
or?
I
Okay.
have 4, and all 4 of them, there's only one that has a teacher at this point.
Back to the substitute question. So as this year, we had that huge vacancy rate, we had to collapse down a lot of courses, and we wound up taking a lot of our math courses and collapsing them into a single room where you had a certified math teacher, a long-term substitute, and in some cases, we've got one of our EC inclusion teachers in there helping. So you're looking at our multipurpose room is full of 50 kids versus that being 3 separate classrooms. So that's been one of the challenges that we fought through this year to make sure that our students had a certified math teacher to get proper math instruction. Yes, sir.
How many AP courses are taught at Albemarle High School?
Currently, there are no AP courses at the school.
You teach chemistry.
We do. That is this semester. That's actually what I used to teach at the school. So in the fall, we had a physical science and biology sections. In the spring, we've got our honors chemistry and chemistry sections.
Reason I ask, I learned that a couple of years ago, kids were having to get in a car and go to North Stanley to take chemistry. And
That had to have been after I left the classroom. So I come out of the pandemic. I actually taught physical science and chemistry up until 2020. There were 3 of us. Now we have 2 science teachers in the department. So there was a biology teacher, an earth environmental teacher, and myself who did the physical science and chemistry. Now we have 2 teachers, one that teaches earth environmental, one that alternated between biology and is now teaching the chemistry.
Further question?
Dr. Johnson, you mentioned that the biggest thing that we are experiencing is getting qualified teachers. What's occurring there in the mix here that's not, are we not competitive? What's the
That's an excellent-
reality?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I don't know why I get excited to answer that question, but that's a good question because it's not a good situation. And I think that's why we started coming together to talk, because that's our biggest concern. So obviously, to be fair, the state of education in North Carolina is, everybody's struggling with teachers in certain positions. So like, knowing that I don't have 3 EC teachers is not abnormal right now, because there's just not enough people that are going into coming out of college with that background. But I think when I look at Albemarle specifically, having had experience as an administrator in Kannapolis, I think one thing that hurts us is, especially when we're looking at attracting and retaining some of the newer teachers that are coming out, which sometimes tend to be some of our better teachers, is just location. If you've got a lot of these people that are younger, living closer to Charlotte, the Concord area, I may interview them, in the past, few years, and then they're going to take a job that's closer to home because some of these other districts offer, higher supplements. So, the salaries created by the state. So regardless of where you go, that's the same. But we lose people to Cabarrus County, Union County, some of these other places that are around us, especially if it's just as convenient to drive there as it is to drive to Albemarle. I don't know. I know you had done some breakdown.
Thanks to the ESSER funds, they had a bonus for the last couple of years at Albemarle High School of $5,000 per year to attract teachers. That actually goes away this year. But when I did the breakdown, if you were a beginning teacher just out of college and you have a choice, you can look at Stanley County schools or you can look at those around us. For us right now, it looks good because that first year you've got an extra $5,000. However, by year 3 or 4, when that goes away, you're actually making less money as a teacher staying in our district versus going to somewhere else. So when it comes down to it, a lot of it is perception of, well, I get this 1 year, it's not guaranteed. Now, where am I going to be when I'm looking at, my life costs with inflation where it is? Teachers are going to pick that's going to carry them the furthest. And when you look at the way the scales work, every year you get a little step increase. Well, that starts to add up over time, especially when you've got a larger supplement from your county versus what we have. So that's a big deciding factor for a lot of beginning teachers.
What is the starting salary for a teacher?
I just wanted to share, I believe it's $39,000 for a first-year teacher. Yep.
How many students are enrolled at Albemarle?
Currently, we have 426 for us, and then the STEM school has 160-ish
So about 600 students at the high school,
in that building, yes.
in that building.
I'm glad to see the band program come back around. It's sad to walk through that school, and I walked out of there in '67, and you can hear the echoes as you go through there, but they seem to be getting better. So I think these other programs are so important to give a full range of educational opportunities to our children. I compliment you on that.
That has been a struggle to get that back this year. Fortunately, we had a retired teacher who was able to contract and come in and at least give us that start. I can tell you, in my time in the classroom there, we went through numerous band directors, and alluded to, one of the problems is, if you're a band teacher, you want an established program. So they can come to us where we're trying to rebuild a program every year, or they can go to a larger school where they've already got an established program. Your band has 75 to 100 kids, where we're looking at 15 to 20, and everything is trying to grow and grow and then pull kids into it. We've lost numerous band directors at Albemarle for that very reason, and that's just in my time in the county. So having a retired teacher coming back to give back to the community is a wonderful thing for our kids, especially since a lot of our kids are musically inclined. So not having that band is taking away an opportunity for them to express themselves.
Well, it gives them an opportunity to go to the next level also.
Correct.
You get a scholarship
Absolutely.
for being in the band and being a good band member. But again, thank you very much.
Welcome.
On behalf of all of us, thank you very much for what all 4 of you are doing. We know you're making great changes, and we look forward to see what you continue to do in the years to come.
I have
Council, any more comments?
one last comment, because I think that we have all talked around it, but we've not hit right on it. Is that supplement gone this year. Is that what I understand? So 23, 24, there won't be any more of that supplement.
And that was only available at Albemarle Middle and Albemarle High. But it is part of the ESSER money, and that does go
And
away.
it was part of what money?
ESSER, the federal COVID relief.
COVID relief money, okay. And is this, just a follow-up to that, is that ESSER money, what else was that being done, if you know, in our school system?
Oh, just when I was there at the county office, with me in student services was hired a security director, so safety and security, and that has been very much worth the money. We do hope that that position continues. Another position was Melissa Smith as community and family engagement, and that is critical to what we are hoping to improve upon. There have been additional employees put in place that I'm sure you've heard about Charlotte Meck and their loss of funding and what they're anticipating. Ours is not quite to that level. But do you have positions at your schools? Tutors? Yeah.
We each have at the elementary level EduCore tutors, and that is a company that provides training for tutors so that they can come in and best serve our students. It also gave us access to much more technology than what we had in the early stages of COVID.
Right.
When we had to go remote for learning, we really struggled with technology, and a lot of those funds have been channeled into technology. But our biggest loss will be at the high school and middle school, those incentives going away. Now, Dr. Johnson and I at East never had that incentive for our staff. And when that first rolled out, it was very tempting for some of our staff to leave, to, in my case, go right across the street to Albemarle Middle. And while I love the middle school, I don't need to lose another staff member for that type of incentive. Thankfully, I was able to entice that staff member to stay, but that is very exciting for a beginning teacher. As Mr. Bradshaw said, that's, more money in their pocket. So teachers are definitely willing to take that bait and go to other districts or other schools, even locally, to earn just a little bit more incentive.
What's available now at elementary level as far as tutoring? Because I know I've personally with family been through COVID and I saw what it did.
It has been very difficult on families. And in some of our data, you will see that in our upper grades in reading, we are struggling to meet our goals. We're making growth, but we're not making the growth that we want to make because we've realized that my fifth graders were in first grade when we went out for COVID, and my current fourth graders were in kindergarten. And those are two pivotal years for learning reading foundational skills. So we do have to rely on tutors and interventions, particularly during the school day, because we can't have kids at all hours of the day and night. Our data tells us that we need to have them, but we can't. We have the opportunity to use Title I, which is federal funding.
Pull that mic down just a little bit.
For extra tutors. So that was Title I funding. And then EduCore, which is funded through ESSER, also provides tutors, but that would go away at the start of next school year. So we could still use our Title I funds, but our EduCore tutors may not be able to continue. Also, outside of the school day, if a school has Title I funds, you can offer supplemental tutoring. East is getting ready to launch a tutoring program at the end of February to help some students, but the families have to provide that transportation. So that does create a hardship for some. So at different schools, different opportunities exist. It's all in kind of how you play your funds that are available to you.
That's what I was wondering, if there was any after school and if it was being utilized.
You can do that through Title I tutoring. That's something that we plan really throughout the year, but mostly in the fall. You set aside money for different ways to provide supplemental instruction to your students. Okay. And that funding is based on how many of your students receive free and reduced lunch or struggle with, finances and things like that at home.
Could you tell us the biggest need you have in the school system? If you could do one, give us what is the biggest need?
I think I can speak for all of my friends up here and say we need great people who are willing to learn how to be wonderful teachers, and we can teach them. I've often said in an interview, if you don't know how to teach reading, we can teach you, but we need you to come work with us and to love kids. And if they're committed to coming and working with us, we'll grow them as professionals to teach reading, writing, math, whatever it might be. But we need people to love our students and to come join us because we can't do this alone. We have a lot of needs, but that is the biggest one. And does anybody else want to share on that?
But to what you're saying there, then we're really getting ready to fall into a deep hole because we have things that are going away
We are.
and nothing coming up to subsidize what was there. So what can we do as a community?
We need to find a way to incentivize great teachers to come to Stanley County and to Albemarle schools and to work with our kids because
All of that is a euphemism for money.
it is.
And well, regardless of that, everything rolls around that word, unfortunately, this day and time. And we're in a troubled world, needless to say. But recognizing the needs are the important thing. We can either sit back and let them go, or we can try to find ways to make it happen. If there's scholarship programs that businesses could do, are you going out to businesses in the community and maybe saying, guys, this is where we are. Look how many employees actually graduated from our high school. I'm concerned with what's happening with with public schools in general. There's great jeopardy out there. So, I think continuing to brainstorm as to what we can do to try to help.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. The health of the community is tied to the health of your school system. If you are not producing employees that are competitive or productive, businesses are not going to come. We've seen, just in my time in the county, the growth in the city schools and the city itself. Where are those graduates going to go work? Are they going to leave the community or are they going to stay? Are we going to bring in more competitive employers into Albemarle to help keep that growth alive and keep fostering a positive relationship with employers and the community itself? So at this point, if you look at just our school, the high school, most of our kids aren't heading to a four-year college. A lot of them are going out into the workforce itself, the military. We need to be able to offer programs that are going to support the needs of the community. So all those career technical education programs need to be things that are in the community that our kids can actually get out and do. We don't need programs that are going to take them out of our community and send them elsewhere because that's taking away our population and that's putting that tax base basically elsewhere. So when you look at our school, for example, we have very few CTE programs based on our size. We've got woodworking, we've got a nursing program, we've got the firefighting program that's been a very big success. Things that are needed in the area, but we could have more because we know our kids are going into the workforce. So I think when you ask what can be done, pushing the support for Albemarle schools, being a voice that turns around a negative stereotype that's unjustly earned and saying, hey, there are great things happening in our schools. We need to support them. We've got wonderful people who work long hours to help our kids be successful. Put that message out there and help the community start saying the same thing so then they want to come in and be a part of our school system.
Thank you.
Thank you all
Thank
very
you.
much.
Well, thank you.
Moving to unannounced delegations. Several unannounced delegations signed up to speak. And I think every one of them involves 10A. First, I'm going to have John Lambert, 6549 Moorhead Road, Harrisburg.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm John Lambert. I'm Chief Operating Officer of Presspro Homes in Harrisburg and also J2 Land Investments. We are an award-winning local home builder and developer. We've been in the area building and developing since 2009. We're one of the first developers to hire trades and vendors locally when everyone else was shutting down, and those people are still with us today. Over 100 different vendor specialties. We build all the way from Statesville down to Rock Hill over to Gaston County and as far as Albemarle, and have built homes here. Before you today, last week you considered Mockingbird. We have a lot that we've purchased that we want to subdivide into 10 lots. Our understanding from the senior planners is that they are by right and meet all of the development conditions. The infrastructure is already in place, and so that's not an issue. We're more than a year out from any vertical construction considerations on it. A couple of things that I'd like to point out to the mayor, to the council, as I was doing research for this area. One of the things that I hear in speaking to councils and local governments throughout the Charlotte area is the need for housing for folks just like our teachers. People are trying to attract new people to their area, but there's not enough housing. We are at a 40% shortage in housing across the United States, and people that are holding on to 2% and 3% rates are not giving up their houses anytime soon. So if people want a new house, it's going to be very difficult for them to find it in the days to come. I'll share a few stats here in just a minute on that. The median, as you know, the median household income in Albemarle is about $44,000. As the teacher said, that they make about starting less than $40,000 annually. For these houses, even the brand new ones, no matter what's being built, if it's brand new and it's somewhere in the $300,000 range, you'd have to make double the median income of Albemarle to be able to afford it. So these are folks that are teachers, these are firefighters, these are policemen, these are folks that are educated, either they're single and they make really good income and therefore contribute to the community and to the tax base, or they're a family that makes double the median income. So this site will hopefully get approved, and we're just asking for the council to sign off so that we may proceed without any further delays. One thing I do want to bring out to you guys, just as a FYI, when it comes to post-pandemic housing issues, this is something that even as a developer caught my attention. I saw it recently. If the U.S. incomes spiked 69%, we'd return to pre-pandemic housing affordability levels. 69%. So I don't think any teacher salaries are going up 69%, or fire or police or anyone like that anytime soon. U.S. home prices would have to fall 41% to return to pre-pandemic affordability. And mortgage rates would have to fall 4 percentage points to return to pre-pandemic affordability. And we don't see that happening anytime soon. We'll never see 2% and 3% rates ever again. So I just want to let you know that we're for Albemarle. We're committed to building a really good quality product here for folks that are professionals and that need housing in order to add to the tax base and to the future growth of Albemarle. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Lambert? Mr. Lambert, one of the things that we have heard a little bit about, what square footage homes do you build?
We build anywhere from 1,200 to over 4,000, 5,000 square foot. Our houses range anywhere from the high 200,000s to $2 million plus. So it just depends. We haven't decided what we're going to build on this site just yet. We're just going through the development phase. So putting on our development hat first, but Presspro is the general contractor and has built houses in Albemarle over the last couple of years.
Thank you.
Sir, you mentioned you have built houses in Albemarle before. Are there any neighborhoods specifically that you've built?
Just infill lots. We start by going into infill lots, building out, areas that are already existing, and we've done that to start, and now we've just got these smaller developments. I know that you guys have a lot of out of town, larger national developers and builders. We are not that. We are a privately held company, but we are fast growing. We're the number 20th fastest growing mid-market company in all of North Carolina. And so we feel like, it's an opportunity for us to come and participate in what's obviously a need here in this area for good housing.
Questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Also have Braden Louder, 6549 Moorhead Road, Harrisburg. Do you wish to speak? Braden
evening.
Lambert, I may have said louder, excuse me.
No, you're good. Yeah, John touched on a lot of the key points here. I just wanted to speak a little bit to the infrastructure requirements for the subdivision. Mockingbird Road is an existing road and public right-of-way. We're going to be widening the right-of-way to 60-foot wide and extending a 6-inch fire water line down the street and placing a fire hydrant at the end of the road. All of this development requirements meets the, current code for fire, utility, stormwater. We're going to have an engineered stormwater or erosion control plan. It's going to be permitted through the state environmental control agencies. So I know that was a concern mentioned at the previous meeting. But other than that, I think John touched on a lot of the key points. But I really, look to keep it a clean and a smooth site. We're not going to be leaving silt in the road or, busting up the road or doing anything that would concern the immediate, surrounding and the neighbors on the street. So that's all I have to say.
Questions, council?
I was handed something sometime back about our requirements for subdivisions, and I wrote out tonight to check out what Mockingbird Road was and in context there. And our regulations say that dead-end streets cannot exceed 400 feet. I rode down Mockingbird Road a while, and it said road ends 500 feet ahead. That means we're already way over the limit for dead-end streets in that area. How did you get that approved with that requirement?
I would need to defer to the planning department on that. I do know that we have a fire truck turnaround at the end of the road. We are, it is possible for us to stub into, I believe it's Bellamy Circle and the Lafayette Street on the other side of the property. But that would require, connecting into that neighborhood, which is not what we're doing right now. But I would need to defer to the planning department on where the road ends now.
You do not wish to tie into Bellamy Circle?
No,
That's
sir.
not your intention?
No,
Is
sir.
that what I understand?
Or Lafayette Drive.
No, sir. We're not
Can you do
intending
it?
to tie in.
Yeah.
How can you do it if the limit is 400?
Again, would have to defer to the planning department, but we do have a fire truck turnaround, which allows for,
There is not a fire truck turnaround on Mockingbird Road right now, and it is already way over 400 feet.
That's correct.
we're placing one which looks like a stub to Bellamy and Lafayette. We're not actually connecting through, but it does allow for a fire truck to turn around at the end of the street.
Let's let Brad from our planning department address your question.
Hi, good evening. So yeah, I was talking to Kevin a little bit about this earlier in the, or last week, sorry. So that's true, Chris. However, the way this is laid out is that this would be a temporary turnaround with a gravel, what they call hammerhead, like a T.
Yeah, I saw that.
Right. But it's just going to be temporary, so it's not a permanent dead-end street.
Yeah, but
Well, then-
what about the 400 feet? It says dead-end streets cannot go over 400 feet.
And if it's not going to be a dead-end street, it's going to be a cul-de-sac.
That is a dead-end street.
So additionally, Kevin was saying that this is sort of a new subdivision, but it's at the end of a subdivision that predates the ordinance. And so it's technically a temporary turnaround. So it's not a permanent dead-end cul-de-sac.
The problem is, I think Mr. Bramlett, what I'm gathering is, this is grandfathered because it's been there for 40 years, in the city for 40 years. I don't think, Ms. Birch, I'm gonna let you refer, if I'm saying this correctly or not, but since it's been there for 40 years, we can't bring him to new standards on a street that's already been rezoned 40 years ago.
Yeah, but we're adding to it.
Ms.
Well,
Birch?
We're adding to it.
without knowing the specifics of the dead end street footage, typically if an ordinance is revised after a parcel is already present, you don't retroactively apply it to that parcel. Now, I don't know about this specific standard that Dr. Bramlett is speaking of, but that would be my presumption, is that the lot was pre-existing prior to the ordinance becoming effective.
Anyone else have any more questions for Mr. Lambert? Thank you. And thank you. Don't go anywhere in case we have any more questions come up, though. I know Kevin's not available tonight, so, and I know you're brand new, so I'm sorry. Jack Penrod, 1726 Bellamy Circle.
Mr. Mayor, Council, good to see you again. It's getting to be a habit. This is ordinance 91.10, minimum design standards. Streets, the design standards which shall apply to streets are as follows. Cul-de-sacs, number 8. Permanent dead-end streets shall not exceed 400 feet in length, depending on topography, and shall be provided a turnaround having a 40-foot radius and a right-of-way of 55 feet. Temporary dead-end streets shall be provided with a turnaround having a 40-foot radius. Temporary turnarounds shall be paved or graveled in accordance with the city specifications and standards. The ordinance states that the development must have a cul-de-sac, which it clearly does not. It's got a hammerhead. What it's shown in the drawing is a hammerhead turnaround, not a cul-de-sac. The development can be redesigned to have a cul-de-sac. However, I guess they'd lose several lots. The builders need to comply with the ordinance. We need to not skirt the ordinance. I have discussed this question with quite a few people. I've had time now at 4 weeks, including Mr. Kevin Robinson. He was very helpful, by the way, very knowledgeable. As I understood it, he informed me that this project was not approved as a cul-de-sac, but rather as a dead-end road, a temporary dead-end road, and therefore meets the ordinance using a hammerhead. So what is a temporary dead-end street? How long is temporary? Where's it going to go after this? There isn't anywhere else to go except to connect into our neighborhood, which, if you'll remember, was one of our original questions. That would be a travesty. Maybe the best answer to this, if you're not going to disapprove it, is to, at the very least, return it to the proper entity to address this properly and bring back something that makes more sense than this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kevin Holbrook, 803 Lafayette Drive.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Council, appreciate you letting me speak again. I was going to say something along the lines of what Jack Penrod, Mr. Penrod said, and speaking to what Ms. Birch said, that maybe this is grandfathered, I don't know, but it seems like if we're putting in a new subdivision, we're hitting new ground. You know, let's change it. If it's just a dead-end street today, well, maybe it's grandfathered, but if we're going to add a development like it is, I think you need to consider putting in a cul-de-sac. Now, maybe they're going to lose some lots. The developer said, you know, they didn't know what they were going to do. They were just an exploratory. position on here. Well, this lot this development is proposed is showing 10 single-family lots. There again, I would just say, I think you need to stick to what the ordinance says to put in the cul-de-sac. I think you could lose a couple lots, put the cul-de-sac, and I think you'd have a lot better development there. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Gonzalez, 1015 Lafayette Drive. You don't wish to speak? Council, that is all of the people that have signed up to speak. We will move on now to the municipal calendar is in your agenda. Anyone have any questions or comments? Moving to the consent agenda. 9A, consider road closures for Falcon Night Out. 9B, consider street closures for the mini medley relay. 9C, revision to the capital asset policy. 9D, public housing payment procedures. 9E, resolution 2405 to accept the $150,000 grant from the water system for the water system asset inventory and assessment. And 9F, resolution 2406 to accept $200,000 in grant funding for the wastewater system asset inventory and assessment. And then 9G, resolution 2407 to consider a resolution requesting annexation of 113 plus acres on Poplar's Grove Church Road. If council moves forward on this, I ask you that you move that date to March the 18th in that resolution as requested by planning and zoning that laid it over for their next meeting. So we need to lay this one over also.
Mr. Mayor, that if we do that 9G, what action do we take tonight and what does it mean?
You're just setting a public hearing to hear it later.
Okay. I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
With the adjustment I mentioned on 9G.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Motion by Councilmember Bramlett, second by Councilmember Townsend. Further discussion?
Just like to make a comment on
Yes, ma'am.
9C and 9D.
Yes, ma'am.
I was anticipating just pulling those off because they both had to do with public housing. But I will vote on the motion as it is, but just make us aware that because we're still going through a public housing communication with HUD, strike that. I think I do want to move C and D. Would you just pull that off so that we do anything, Chris, dealing with public housing by itself, since we're in still communication with them through
That's okay.
HUD? If you would do that, I would appreciate it. Then we've got one that's dealing with the consent agenda and then one just dealing with public
You
housing.
want to pull out one of them,
I want to pull out C and D
C and D.
because they both have to do with
Yep.
public housing.
It's okay with me.
Mr. Bramlett, how about the second? Townsend?
I'll let somebody else second it. I want to approve the consent.
Okay, I'm gonna back up. I'm gonna back up then. The second has been withdrawn from approving the consent agenda. So, Mr. Bramlett, you need to make another motion if you wish to.
I move approval of the consent agenda as it is given.
Motion by Councilmember Bramlett to approve the agenda as approved, as given, with the change though for the date to the 18th on the
Yes,
left.
sir.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Aldridge. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Passes 5-2. All items pass 5-2. They voted against?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, so you voted for.
Yeah.
Townsend and Hall voted against. Moving back to unfinished business, 10A, major subdivision 2401 to reconsider a 10-lot traditional subdivision on Mockingbird Road. Council, at the last meeting, there was a motion made for us to reconsider this tonight. And if council wishes to reconsider it, only 4 of you have the ability to make the motion because you were in the majority last time. That would be Council Members Hunt, Councilmember Dry, Councilmember Bramlett, and Councilmember Aldridge. What are your wishes?
Your Honor, before we do that any further, got a question here. Dr. Bramlett mentioned earlier, and I think Mr. Penrod read off this cul-de-sac, and I think you addressed maybe it was, we're not sure if it was grandfathered Do we know when this was actually adopted? I mean, the date? Is there any way that we could find out when this was actually adopted?
I cannot answer that for you. Not tonight, anyway. We would have to
Is
look
there
back in
not
the
some
records.
date
No,
noticed
not
on
on
there?
this. There's not a date on there.
Not at the bottom.
No, sir.
No.
I couldn't tell you tonight without that being researched. But the rezoning happened when the annexation occurred
Understand.
over 40 years ago. Council, what's your wishes?
We need to bring it back up, Your Honor. So move that motion forward, please.
You're making a motion to reconsider
That's correct.
the subdivision on Mockingbird Road. Motion by Councilmember Dry.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Townsend. Further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
No.
Motion, that's 4-3, am I correct? You got that, Ms. Stone? Okay. Motion carries. All right, now, council, you've made a motion to reconsider. What do you want to do with it?
Could I ask the developer to come back up for a moment, please?
Yes, sir. You have a right to ask anything you want.
Yes, sir.
The word I keep hearing was cul-de-sac.
Yes, sir.
Talk to me about that.
If we were, at this point, if we were going to do a cul-de-sac, it was the planning director's recommendation. How many months ago did we do this? A year ago? So it's been over a year. We've been in this process. And with his recommendation, we were told to do the hammerhead for the fire turnaround. So we're here a year later and a second meeting to get something done that was told to us by the planning director of what to do. If we were forced in some position to do a cul-de-sac, we would just choose to tie into the road of the subdivision behind it. And that's our right to be able to do that. So I don't think that's what the neighbors want. I think they want to keep it separate from their neighborhood because it will be a different level of home. No matter what I've convinced or not convinced people of about the nature of the home, it's going to be a brand new home. You're going to have to make $80,000 or more a year to own it, but it may not be the type of neighborhood that they want connected to Lafayette and those other streets.
Do you own the property all the way to Bellamy?
Yep. Go ahead.
No, we don't own the property on Bellamy. What he means is basically we would run a right-of-way up to that property, which would allow for future connectivity if someone wished to develop the property on Bellamy. Right now, it dead ends where the hammerhead stub out ends, and there are two driveways coming off that property, which are lots. So those are going to be backyards, and they're going to have a tree protection buffering the neighbors on either side. If we were to take those out as lots, we can flip them and run lots perpendicular to Bellamy and run an open alleyway or an open right-of-way right into the parcel on either side. So somebody on either of those parcels could pull it through and connect it to the road in the future. Right now, it's just going to be somebody's backyard.
I got a bad feeling about this because last time we met, we were almost told that we were committing a crime by voting the other way. That if every element of this planning and zoning were met, that we had to vote to approve it. Clearly, not every element of that subdivision has met the requirements. How on earth did Kevin and others almost threaten us by their comments when clearly it wasn't true?
I would say that it is met because we are providing a turnaround with a minimum of a 55-foot wide alleyway
I'm talking about
or a right-of-way.
400 feet on a dead-end street.
I think you'll also find what the mayor was bringing out is that this was 40 years ago. So whatever you've approved recently, whatever the date is on it, this is retroactive back to that time when the parcel was originally.
And if I may add.
And it is the continuation of an existing road that already exists. It's a subdivision that already exists.
It's already not
Yeah,
legal.
it's already got houses down that road, Mockingbird, if you look down there.
And if I may add, the question that I have again is about this right here.
Well,
When was this thing written?
That's not for him. That's for
I
staff.
wasn't. I'm
And
just.
Kevin is not here tonight, so we can't answer that question.
I don't think it matters.
Well,
That's the law now.
that's what I'm saying.
Wasn't there a checklist that was provided that checked yes or no if we were meeting the requirements of the subdivision before went before 2 weeks ago?
Yes.
Your Honor,
Yes.
hold on one second.
Council, if you will, go into your
Here you go.
attachments and look at the checklist there, and you can tell what Mr. Robinson has checked off for approval. It's on the very first attachment, and you'll see it in green where he has documented each one of them. He has documented that the lineal feet in streets is met.
This was passed by the planning board.
Yes, the planning board did pass it and send it to us.
So I'd like for Britt, one more
Yes,
time,
sir.
sorry, Britt, might I, Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
So going back to 2 meetings ago, when we were given this checklist and everything is completed or good or passed or that kind of thing. And last meeting, I specifically asked before the vote, I don't even know if it was after a motion was made or not, where we were legally on this. With this new information about the cul-de-sac or the hammerhead or the new language or the new information that has been brought forward, if it had been brought forward at the last meeting or meeting before last, I didn't pick up on that, okay? And by looking at you, you did not either, is that correct?
That's correct.
So based on what you have heard tonight as our legal counsel, I need the legal opinion on, I agree that everything was on the checklist, everything was passed, and that it was 40 years ago, and I knew where I stood, but I won't ever vote on anything if I'm not doing it, not just ethically, but legally. So I want you to give me the legal opinion based on what we've heard this evening.
So generally, when planning completes the checklist, they are providing the attestation that all of the requirements have been met. It sounds like Kevin and the developer have been in conversation for well over a year, and so I would presume that road connectivity and footage was discussed within that year timeframe. And based on Kevin's checklist, it appears that all the requirements have been met. I don't want to speak on Kevin's behalf, but I think he has spoken up at the past several meetings saying that all the requirements are met. So I would presume he would say the same thing tonight. And if that is the case, then it being only an administrative approval, council would approve it if all the conditions have been satisfied.
Ronnie, you got somebody else.
Come on back up.
Any of you ever looked at this development ordinance? It's like a dictionary. I wouldn't expect the planning department to know everything. Is it quite possible that they just missed it? They didn't see the part about cul-de-sac. They put in, if they put a hammerhead in there so they could just extract more lots out of it. I don't think our ordinance says anything about a hammerhead. It says cul-de-sac. That's what it says. I know y'all want to move this along, but we have to make this decision tonight. That's what your ordinance says, and maybe you didn't know that till tonight. I know somebody brought this to my attention. I didn't go searching for it, but it's in there.
And I hadn't heard about it until tonight.
Section 9110-8, cul-de-sacs, and Mr. Penrod just.
Jay, you have a comment?
It may or may not be appropriate for me to come up and comment on this, but I'm just trying to provide some perspective of my previous tenure in planning, understanding that Kevin is out. So the ordinance that references minimum design standards is what we I will say we, but what we applied to new subdivisions, which this subdivision is a new subdivision. Give me 1 second. So if we look at Mockingbird Road here on GIS, this subdivision is an existing subdivision. What is currently built out here, the right-of-way, as you can see, goes all the way close to about the end of the parcel and almost over here to Lafayette Drive. The street, as you can see, ends approximately here. So for whatever reason, back in the day when this subdivision was originally approved, they no longer built out the street and therefore built no more houses beyond it. What I understand of this development or this proposed development is that they are going to be adding a street to the existing city right-of-way. I do understand that they are putting in a hammerhead. From my recollection of Appendix D in Fire Code for alternative fire apparatus turnaround, is hammerheads are allowed. So are cul-de-sacs. So I just wanted to offer this perspective to the council. I'm not trying to get involved here from a utility standpoint, but again, with Kevin absent, and I hope he would kind of agree with this perspective that the right-of-way out here is existing. So I don't believe any further right-of-way is being added, thus not adding to the 400 feet of dead end, not exacerbating that existing issue from when this development was originally approved back in the day. And I might be able to source a plat from this GIS showing that originally approved development.
So the road is already platted, it's just now gonna be paved. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. The right-of-way extends several hundred feet out from where the street ends, but the right-of-way is still there. And therefore, under city maintenance as is, without a street currently being located there.
So how many feet is Mockingbird Lane currently?
I mean, I'm going to pull an unofficial measurement from.
Good that we have a utilities director with some planning
That's right.
experience.
So the right-of-way is approximately 1,500 feet from the intersection of Mountain Creek. I would say the street approximately ends, where the existing street is
No,
approximately.
it ends right where that street comes in. Go a little further to the left.
Sorry.
I've been out there. It ends right there, right there.
Right here? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's approximately 1,100 to 1,200 feet from the intersection.
Right.
So the right-of-way, the street ends approximately 1,200 feet, we'll say, and then the existing right-of-way ends about 1,500 feet.
So when our ordinance says they can't be more than 400 feet, we've got 1,500 feet already.
Correct.
Does
And
that
no
make it
turnaround.
sense to add to it?
Well, I'm just coming from the perspective that the right-of-way already exists. It wouldn't make much sense for the city to do so, to extend the street. That doesn't serve anything right now, but if the properties were to be developed, and the way the ordinance is right now is that if someone were to come back here and build one home on this parcel, which would also be by right, our ordinance requires the developer extend that street to that home so that home could front a paved public right-of-way. So not trying to split hairs here, 10 versus 1.
But if that were the case, Jay, would that not go against our own ordinance if we had to extend it?
So I believe the spirit and intent of the ordinance as it's written is, so if we are working from a blank slate here, just a vacant piece of property that a developer wanted to come in and build brand new streets, brand new right-of-ways, that we wouldn't allow a block to exceed 400 feet and terminate in a dead end. And we have other areas in the city that are exactly like this, where we have paper streets. That's what we call a right-of-way that was not built out. Since the right-of-way is currently there, there's really only two options for that right-of-way. It either gets developed or it gets abandoned by council.
Thank you, Jay.
Yes, sir.
Further questions, council? Council, what do you wish to do?
I want to make a motion to approve the development, and then I'll discuss.
Motion by Councilmember Whitley to approve the development.
Is that what the motion needs to
Do-
be?
The,
Yeah, it
what's
is.
the
It is.
24?
Right, it is.
Do I
Major
have-
subdivision 2401.
Yeah. Do I have a second?
A second for matter of discussion.
Second by Councilmember Hall. Further discussion?
I mean, what I have heard is that the right-of-way is already there. It precedes any changing in the ordinance to prohibit one that far with a dead end. The planning department has already done the checklist apparently a long time ago. Planning and zoning approved it, so I haven't heard anything that tells me it doesn't meet the law, doesn't meet the local ordinances. You know, I don't get to vote my personal opinions up here. I just get to vote what I'm presented with, what the ordinances are, as best we understand it.
Anyone else have any comments? I have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor of approving the motion, raise your hand. Those opposed? Motion carries 4-3.
Folks, before you leave, excuse me, I'd asked the planning director to come to us with either a new ordinance or a text amendment that would not allow this to happen again. It's caught us by surprise. It's caught y'all by surprise. Unfortunately, based upon the criteria that we have to work with, and I voted against it twice. Hopefully that we could come up with something that would be, that,
You asked us to come up with an ordinance that is violated. That was the first meeting. It doesn't follow the ordinance. So now what are you supposed to do? You go ahead and approve it anyway. There's only one person capable, and it's the planning director.
Okay, we're not going to argue this. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your comments.
Trust the planning director.
Moving on to new business. 11A, golf carts or low-speed vehicle use update. I believe Police Chief has that.
I got 250 houses in my backyard that are 15 feet apart. Yeah, and I didn't vote on it.
All right, Mayor, City Council, thank you for having us here today for the presentation of golf carts use on the roadway. And looking at the purpose for what we're here to discuss, and this is like a preliminary plan of what some suggestions for a local ordinance could look like. And we've looked at a few other jurisdictions in Stanley County, as well as one that has been implemented over in Oak Island, the town of Oak Island. And what's significant about Oak Island is that they had some flexibility with their ordinance. So really with whatever the desire is from council with citizens' input, you know, Oak Island can be looked at for a flexibility pattern for the ordinance. All right, as you look at the regulations on golf carts according to the North Carolina Code, the general statute gives the county here the regulations to amend or regulate golf carts. And very similar, it does the same thing with the city under 1060A 300. So what this does is just basically any city, within the city, any road, highway, where the speed is under 35 miles an hour or less,
the municipal government can enact a city ordinance to set up a policy on how that's going to be regulated for a golf cart. There is specific code on golf cart that goes into the state code on what that is, and that's any vehicle that travels, generally a golf cart's a electric vehicle that travels under the speed of 20 miles an hour. And it's what you see on the golf courses. It's meant for sports-related activities or recreation. And then dropping down to what's a modified vehicle or a low-speed vehicle, there's a state permit allowable for those vehicles, and that's generally any vehicle that travels above the speeds of 20 miles an hour. And there are some code sections in there where we can modify. If city council decides to go that route, there's factors that are involved with that specific vehicle for a code section to modify for different speeds and what's required of that.
So the bottom line is 35 miles an hour or less.
Yes, any within the city of Albemarle, and you can cross, like you could cross 2427. You could set up the ordinance to specifically say that you can cross to go to one side or the other, but
you can't traverse it.
Right, you can't cut across it at an angle either. It's got to be a perpendicular intersection.
So you could drive a golf cart on Main Street the whole way?
Yes, if the ordinance allows that. And there are some communities, towns, cities within the state that only allow it in certain communities or in specific neighborhoods. So it's up to the council to decide what they want to do with that ordinance. I apologize for the not so ease of access from one slide to the next.
This is quite a change from when we did this before, because at that time, there were a lot of, I think the state reserved the right to set its own rule on the state roads through town. Now it looks like we're able to include the state roads also.
Yeah, the state, for golf carts, I want to say it's at least 12, 14 years that the state's permitted the city and the county by the general statute to allow cities to enact an ordinance regulating golf carts. Just recently, though, I believe in the last 3 years, the low-speed vehicle statute came into play.
So, Chief, let me ask a question. On this deal, would these have to have license tags on them?
And that's open to the ordinance. If you're looking at golf carts, if you're looking at a low-speed vehicle, then I would suggest having the state register those vehicles. But that's up to to you guys to decide how you want to regulate that on city ordinance. My recommendation
we could have it on
would
both
be
golf carts and.
Yeah, even if it was an electric golf cart traveling under a speed of 20 miles an hour, I would suggest we have some type of registration for that. We're going to talk about that here shortly.
And it seemed like I seen it in one of the examples that you gave where I think for the registration, one of the municipalities actually deferred it to, I guess, like the state registration instead of police department having to do it on an annual basis.
Yeah, if you look through Oak Island is the one that did that. They have a low-speed vehicle that is registered through the state, and then they modified what their golf cart usage was for like a handicapped use. You had to have basically a doctor's release stating that you needed that for mobility transportation use. But again, that's up to the city council to modify the ordinance for the intention for what the community is wishing to get out of this.
Yeah. Under no circumstance would I want it to be too time consuming on our law enforcement, but I don't know from a revenue generating standpoint, the permit fee, if it would be beneficial or just consider going through the state. That's one aspect that I would.
And that's something that we'll get to here in a little bit, is the analysis of what to look at in planning for this. This is just really a preliminary, and it gets the wheels turning for all of us. So again, this is more regulations on what, if you chose to go with the low-speed vehicle and what you can regulate. And again, like no driving on sidewalks. This is from the town of Oak Island. That's with golf carts as well. And that's things that they set up in their regulations. So and this is where their specific ordinance for the golf cart is, and again, you can see as you read through there that it's specific for mobility. And that's going to be handicapped individuals or people that would be in like a scooter situation or a electric wheelchair where maybe it's cost effective that they may already have a golf cart to utilize that. And that might be an option for some folks. And that they work their golf cart ordinance into just specifically that. But again, each town or city council can write ordinance how they specifically desire it to be for the needs of the public.
Was there a reason that you pulled out Oak Island?
Just to show the flexibility and how you, as a city council, have the opportunity to modify or restrict or even allow different variations within the ordinance.
I mean, I see Oak Island being more of a, I mean, since it's at the coast, people do that all the time down at the coast. That's the reason I asked
Right.
that.
Yeah, it's a little different there because a lot of it is written in for individuals to get to the beach.
But I mean, we have Locust, Baden, some other cities, and that may be what you're going to talk about here in a minute.
Yeah, he's going to get to that, right?
We have theirs in there as well. So these are the cities within Stanley County that we've looked at and what they've done. And Locust is in there, Baden, as well as Oakboro.
And Norwood has one as well. They use golf carts in Norwood as well.
Right. And we've looked at a few others outside of the county. I looked at one just a few days ago in Lincolnton. They've got a well-written policy on that as well, an ordinance. But again, a lot of the overlap with how they regulate in Oakboro, again, they modify theirs a little bit differently. They call a slow-moving vehicle, and you'll see there it does not exceed 28 miles an hour. So again, that shows some flexibility opportunity in how you want to craft the ordinance.
I mean, it says must be equipped with rear vision mirror. That's probably going to be a feature on most of your newer golf carts, correct?
Yes, and again, with that on golf carts, you can have an oversized mirror. I've seen where you have that plus two side mirrors. It all comes into that risk management piece on how you want to do the safety equipment.
Addressing the cities you used in Stanley County, keep in mind that Locust, they would not be allowed on the main road through Locust because that speed limit is greater than 35 miles an hour.
Right.
But they can cross those
So
roads.
they can cross it. They could.
They can cross it though.
At an intersection.
There was big controversy on that, and the Locust tried to get the state to let them reduce that to 35, and they wouldn't let them do it.
Right, and that's state maintained highway, so you got to do that through the state. All right, and another big concern would obviously be the 16 years of age and whether or not they have a valid driver's license. My opinion on that is that I would like to see a 16-year-old plus with a valid driver's license. There are some jurisdictions that allow 16 years of age or older, and they don't have anything with the driver's license. Oh. I think that's what we talked about last time when this came up was license.
But Chief, on that part right there, I remember back, long time ago when I turned 16, the day I turned 16, I got a driver's license, I could drive anytime I wanted to drive. Now, are they not staggered, like they have to have so many hours with a parent, and then like once they turn 16, they can only drive specific hours and things like that?
Graduated driver's license now.
Yes, there are, and it's been a few years since I've been in the BLET and have that specific section, but yeah, there are restrictions. They've got to do so many hours in like a driver ed and or with another adult with them.
That part
So
of it's like a
having,
nightmare.
having some, they would have to meet the needs of or qualify if they've got a driver's license. If they've got to be with an adult, they'd have to have an adult with them in the front seat passenger side.
Did you see at the Oak Island, on the Oak Island ordinance, is 16 the age to operate, or is it 18? Do you remember?
Theirs is a low-speed vehicle. You have to have a mobility situation from a doctor for the golf cart.
Yeah.
So I'd have to.
To Councilmember Townsend's point, I just don't want to. If we do something like this and it's 16 years of age, I don't want our officers getting caught up trying to figure out, what step they're on and, all this, that, and the other. I can see that being a nightmare.
It would qualify the same as if they were behind the wheel of a car.
Yeah, at Oak Island, they do say no person less than 16 years of age may operate.
I don't think you'll see that many.
Is
on
there a
the
group
freeway.
or any organization that's pushing for this? Because I'd never heard anything about it,
Yes.
and
Um,
I just wondered who is it that wanting to do this?
I asked that this be brought back up after hearing from some people in 3 different subdivisions within the city over a frequent period of time. So I asked council to reconsider this. We talked about it, I think, back in 2016, 2017.
Several years ago.
So,
And I think we had a public hearing and nobody showed
Yeah.
up.
And I will tell you, I've had some folks in my neighborhood who have asked that it be brought back up, and I've told them that they should probably come to council to make that request, and they have not. But there have been some folks that wanted it discussed.
Would we have a public hearing?
But if we would do so, I think we ought to have a public
Yes.
hearing.
Yeah, and here's locuses and some pieces that are taken out of their ordinance. And they've got, theirs can't exceed the speed limit of 8 miles an hour. And a lot of the registration pieces are done with the police department. And the fees, some cities and towns have done $5. I've seen 20, I've seen 30. There's not a great burden placed on the police department for the registration piece. We have talked about it. I sent this out for the captains to look at patrol because that's probably who would be doing it, or somebody at the headquarters Monday through Friday. That it would burden us more, I think, at headquarters trying to ensure somebody was there to get that done, but that's something we could work on. And again, I think there's flexibility with that.
but just so with the permit or registration, just, I know people come at different times of the season, but would you make it just like on, say, like on a annual calendar year versus, people coming all different times of the season?
I
everything
personally
expired?
would not want to regulate and say that you've got to come in here on one of these dates to get it done. If somebody buys one later in the season and we had an ordinance in place, I don't think it's very fair to say that, well, you got to wait an entire year. So it's not going to place that big of a burden.
Okay.
If we worked out a good ordinance, I think we can
It could be
take,
handled.
yeah,
Okay,
take
all right,
registrations throughout
gotcha.
the year. But I would say just like motor vehicles do it for an annual basis.
Okay. All right.
What would be the biggest obstacle that your force would have with this,
I wrote some notes out on that and just looking
other than the
hypothetically.
administrative end?
Yeah, it's really strategically thinking, what is it going to do to our roadways, traffic patterns, and issues we already see? Because now we're going to put potentially more vehicles and a slower moving vehicle on the roadway in a 35-mile-an-hour zone. So we could have some hazards built in. I wish I could rely back on, you guys have brought it up before. I'd love to have a traffic engineer to come in and talk and do a study and set some speed strips out and tell us what the speeds, the average speeds, how many vehicles are traveling roadways, and then be able to crunch some data together to give a more accurate feedback on that. But looking at it hypothetically, if we had, say, 10% of the city, and that's, just give that an average of maybe even 1,000 people or 1,000 carts out there, that's, that potentially maybe 100 to 200 a day traveling throughout the city. It could cause a potential burden out there. It just really depends on the individual behind the wheel and how responsible they act. We have a lot of problems out there with vehicles already, and responsibility is obviously a factor. But those are some of the things we've got to consider.
Chief, were you able to find, going back or speaking with anyone in the department about what was presented to us 6 years ago, 8 years ago?
I had some conversation, but a lot of it just didn't seem like it grabbed anybody's attention to pursue.
So there was nothing written, no documentation on anything?
I couldn't find anything.
We had that in a previous agenda.
I thought we did.
Yeah.
And if
probably
we
about a
had
month
it,
ago.
if we had it, he should have had it.
Yeah, I sent the attachment because
Yeah.
I went back and found.
That's the reason I made that comment, because we should have had, there should have, I thought I had seen something, Dexter, that you
I can
sent.
send it back out if needed. But
Okay,
But
yeah,
the
I
chief might
personally
need
haven't
that.
seen
Okay,
anything
all right.
and haven't been presented any material from anybody in the police department. You know, we looked at it holistically as if we implemented today, what are other jurisdictions doing and what would ours look like? And, you know, another piece to this too, and you kind of commented towards it, is get a workshop together, invite the public to come in and have a conversation about what their needs are, what their expectations are, and have a real conversation with them about, you know, just risk management. You know, if the police department's concerned about these areas, what are we going to do as a team in a collaborative effort to minimize risks? And you'll see everybody, you know, part of the piece is you have insurance on these vehicles.
Why would you have a speed limit of 35 and not let these go but 25?
That's just the way the state wrote the description for an electric golf cart.
I can see a lot of cars lined up behind a golf cart
Yeah.
wanting to get around. And
if you get out to
go.
the Keys in Florida, many of the islands down there have golf carts, and that is a problem down there. And, you know, you experience that with pedestrian traffic, bicycles. You know, it's just being gracious on the roadway to others. So Baden, the town of Baden has some of their restrictions in here, their ordinance. And their permit fee is $10. Again, I wouldn't get hung up whatever fee you guys, we could talk about that, and you know, it wouldn't take probably, as long as all the equipment checks out, we could probably do a registration inspection on one of these vehicles. I'd say in about 15 to 20 minutes max.
I may be totally wrong, but I don't envision a whole lot of people riding on.
I don't either.
You know, other than subdivisions and neighborhood traffic. You know, that's kind of what I envision. You know, taking place from an ordinance of this nature.
Yeah, and
They're very popular at the beach.
they are. And
Practically every beach. And I look out and see who's doing it and where they're going. They look like adult toys to me.
yeah, and a lot of that is because of parking restrictions too. You know, it's a much smaller environment. They don't want the vehicles down there, so this is an option for them. And when you have tourism,
You want
Yeah.
a cart, I know what it is.
yeah, a lot of families come out there and the kids are screaming to get in the golf cart and ride in that. So, and it's a business out there as well because they rent them. So, you know, moving forward, I would say the next steps for us would be to consider meeting some folks in the community, getting them involved in a workshop, gather some data. I've already talked to a couple other chiefs in the area that have golf carts, and they've implemented it in the last couple of years. I will tell you, when it first came up, I would just say I was against it, but I've opened my mind to the thought that they said they haven't had any real big problems from it. So it kind of makes sense. You know, it's something that's happening. It can happen with us controlling how it happens, or eventually it's probably going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
So I think if we just take a fair stance and look at what we can do and how we can create those safety nets and make sure for enforcement purposes, you know, law enforcement has a real good, solid ordinance set to follow.
And Norwood got a golf course in their town, and I can't recall seeing a golf cart in the town part.
Yeah, there is
Is that-
town, yeah.
is it?
Folks
Okay.
that live in town, oh
Okay,
yeah.
they ride them around in
They
town.
do, they
Okay,
do.
all right.
I guess since we've had some information before, and I thought we had seen, that's the reason I asked you, Chief, have you seen what we had gotten several, I don't know, Dexter, 2 months ago?
I'll send it back out tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think you need that. I think that, and
Yeah, no, I think I was out for an extended issue when
Well,
that was probably sent out. And
somebody at the PD, we hope, or
Right.
at least some communication should have gotten to the PD. So I'd like for that to be incorporated too, because I think we're
Definitely.
going back and reinventing the wheel, and that's not fair. I mean, maybe we pick up where we left off there.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's look at that and then bring it back to council, if you will, Chief, and then the council can decide if they want to set a public hearing.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. 11B, Code Enforcement, Minimum Housing and Commercial Maintenance Update.
Good evening. I apologize.
Is it in the agenda?
There's no attachments on the
Right.
agenda.
So, you can log in. I mean, this machine is a public machine, so it doesn't allow you to use the USB stick. Can you log into your email and get it? So, you can go to
Council, it's going to take him just a few minutes to get logged in, so let's go ahead and start our roundtable. Mr. Rhodes, you have anything?
No, I don't.
Mr. Townsend?
Yes, hold on one second. First of all, first thing is I know a lot of people seen some of the different comments about our parks and stuff on social media today, but social media is just something that in local government and as city leaders, we're gonna have to deal with the positives and the negatives. One person, I think we communicated some today. One person was speaking negatively about the condition of our parks, but then it was counteracted on one of the social media pages with some photographs and things of that nature that really, I guess, summarized that our parks are in great condition. You know, when the parks and stuff, the photos of Rock Creek Park was publicized on one of the social media pages. So I guess, it's always a lot of issues. I guess it seemed like the pot gets stirred. Why are we doing this? Why are we not doing that? Why are we putting money in the alleyway project and things of that nature? But I was glad to see that we saw both sides of the story from different points of view, and just like us as a council, we're going to have different points of view on any issue, I was glad to see that. Only other comment that I'll make tonight is, we know that Albemarle and Stanley County is a great market for good, clean family entertainment. And so with that being said, I want to thank the Albemarle Rotary Club for bringing the Harlem Wizards to town last Thursday. I think it was just great seeing the smile on all those kids and adults on their faces. I actually enjoyed that. And more personally, I want to thank Councilmember Benton Dry. I know he didn't ask for nobody to know about this or anything of that nature, but sometimes we have people that go above and beyond to make things happen. And Councilmember Dry made it possible for a lot of kids in the community to attend that event. And I want to just personally thank you.
Thank you,
Yes,
Councilman.
he did.
Mr. Bramlett? Mr. Aldridge?
I just want to take a minute to thank the police chief. Our last meeting, we had a lot of conversation about some issues downtown. And, just driving through downtown, you can definitely feel a much stronger police presence. Not only officers walking the street, police cars being visibly downtown. I think that's eased the minds of a lot of our business owners and local, folks that patronize downtown. So, Chief, please keep that up. Let's keep a very a spotlight on that, and until we can get to that February 13th meeting with a lot of the different groups in the community. That's all I got.
Mr. Townsend, you had something else?
Yes, and I guess this will be for our planning as well as our code enforcement. Here recently, I got a few concerns from some neighbors or houses in the area of right down Groves Avenue. Apparently, it's a masonry shop or something that's going in right across the street from our fire department, and I guess they're starting to haul a lot of bricks and all kinds of debris and junk in the back of the building. And but the biggest concern from the neighbors is apparently this building is like a garage. Like they running a generator all times of the night, and it's kind of upsetting a lot of the neighbors. And so I like for somebody to look into it, see if what they're doing is legal, or do they not have power to the facility, or why are they running a generator all times of day and night? You know, I wouldn't be surprised if our fire department, they probably aware of it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Hall?
A couple of things in front of you at the dais tonight is a handout that I was sent by DHHS, and I asked that, and I appreciate Cindy copying this for you all, dealing with some issues that we have talked about. So this talks about that syringe services and the syringe exchange, so that we can know who's doing it and how they're doing it. And I will say to you and offer you that this is a program that DHHS, Department of Health and Human Services in Raleigh, actually is doing, and using a local vendor here to distribute. And they are willing, the folks with DHHS are willing to come and talk with us more specifically about what's going on. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I handed out the law enforcement risk review process, and this is something that the North Carolina municipalities does free for any police department who has property and casualty insurance with them, and we do. And I would respectfully ask that this is just a review process, that we enter into it. People do it all the time. So I handed you all at a meeting, I guess a meeting ago, the information from that. So I would ask that we consider doing that with the police department. I will tell you that next week on the 13th, the meeting, the community meeting, has now been changed. It's not going to be in the Ray Allen room. It will be in here. There were 23, 25 different agencies to whom a survey has been sent out, and I reached out to Shanta today to figure out if we had any responses from that, and that's where we're going to start, is what the responses are saying. I know a lot of people are really interested in what's going to take place that day, and I think if anything, and the main goal for that day, I think from Shanta Homes of Hope standpoint, is that the agencies primarily hear what the other agencies are providing. So, and it looks like we're having a little technical difficulty here, so not being able to get into it.
Are you complete?
I believe so.
Okay, Mr. Whitley?
I just want to tell Dexter, I saw you as you were leaving the game up there. I got to get my wife's in the Rotary Club, so I got invited to go help her. And we spent 5 hours selling souvenirs right there outside the door. So I didn't get to watch the game.
Yeah.
Maybe next year if they do it again, but that was tremendous. They
great.
sold something over 1,200 tickets. It was standing room only.
Good.
It was amazing.
Mr. Dry?
I just want to say, I really like what our newspaper does sometimes to honor our citizens, especially those that have left us here lately. I enjoyed reading that information about Gene. It was quite informative. Some of the, you know somebody all your life, but you find out you really don't know a whole lot about them other than what you see day in and day out. And how do you replace someone like that? You don't. And we'll miss him for forever.
Try to log in 3 times. Is that it, Mr. Rose?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hunt?
No comment.
Are you still having difficulties?
I would respectfully request if I could move this to the next
But
meeting.
I was going to continue it to the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion that we go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina.
What about that?
What about the Planning Development Services 11?
We pulled that in the
Okay, that's right.
agenda.
Okay, gotcha.
I'll entertain a motion that we go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statutes 143, 318, 11A, 1, 3, 4, and 6 for information that is privileged and confidential under state law. Consult with the city attorney, economic development, and personnel.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember
Second.
Dry, second by Councilmember Townsend. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries.